Hello, everybody. This is our presentation on stem rust of wheat by Matt Wright, Max Fagan, and Josh Peterson. Introduction. The stem rust of wheat is caused by the fungus Puccina graminis. The genus Puccina is the largest in the Puccineales, I don't know how to say that, and is one of the most destructive genera of fungi economically. It is known as one of the most dangerous diseases known to cereal crops. Cereal rust fungi produce serious issues because they can produce large amounts of infectious spores. In 1999, a new form of graminis was found in Uganda and has spread, causing an epidemic in Kenya and Ethiopia. History. In 1865, Anton de Berry first recognized the nature of heterogeneous life cycle. However, the role of each spore stage was not completely understood until 1927 by John Craigie. Although stem rust is caused by a single species of fungus, Puccina graminis, there is genetic variation within the species. In 1884, Erickson discovered host-specific subspecies of the fungus. Each special form is designated in Latin as a forma specialis. All of the forma specialis have an identical appearance but vary in host range. Historical significance. Stem rust is one of the major diseases of wheat and barley, and therefore a potential threat to the world food supply. Wheat is the largest food crop in the world, and barley is the sixth largest. Together they account for more than 25% of the world's food supply. It is estimated that more than $5 billion are lost to cereal rust each year. Even in 384 to 322 BC, stem rust was a serious problem in Greece and Rome. Also, there has been clubs that have formed from the stem rust of wheat. For example, the Rust Buster is a medal given to school children who helped in the barberry eradication program. The biology of the pathogen. Rust fungi are obligate parasites. They require a living host tissue for their growth and reproduction. Without a living tissue host, they can survive as spores. Only teleospores can survive without a living host plant for more than a few months under certain field conditions. Puccina graminis is heteroecious, which means that rust fungi require two host plants like wheat and barberry to complete their life cycle. Puccina graminis is macrocyclic, which means that it can produce in all five stages, which are basidiospores, pycniospores, aciospores, uridinospores, and teleospores.
Some common symptoms and signs of stem rust of wheat and other grass hosts usually start as powdery red uridinospores on top of the leaf. The spores are usually covered with fine spines, as you can see in the middle picture, and later in the disease cycle, you'll see that black teleospores start to begin in infected areas. The primary inoculum for stem rust is known as Puccina graminis, and it can begin as a disease cycle by infecting either barley or wheat. The weather plays a major part in the disease cycle as well. For example, in warmer climates, the first spores to infect the plants are uridinospores. Seeds that fall off or go missing during purchasing or moving of seeds are known as volunteer wheat plants that usually become infected after falling to the ground and sprouting. And these volunteer plants are a major source of the start of stem rust. They are also the gateway to help the Puccina graminis survive the summer. In temperatures with changing climate, like Minnesota for example, few wheat varieties are capable of surviving through the winter. In this case, the first spores to infect the plant would be seen when aciospores infect barley. There are two disease cycles for stem rust, though in my case I am here to explain the disease cycle of wheat infected by stem rust. Without barberry plants, the uridinospores reach wheat plants through the wind from the colder northern American states to the south. After reaching the south, the uridinospores infect the seeds after fall planting, coming from the volunteer plants. Telium and teleospores form, which soon turn to basidiospores, and they infect the alternate host. Pycniospores then form in the pycnium, and there the pycniospores fuse with the flexuous hyphae through the mycelium. Lastly, the aciospores form in the iacium, and the cycle starts over again at the host plant. Barberry is not a factor in the stem rust cycle in the south because they do not become infected there. Stem rust is also able to only live for one season to the next through a host. Though symptoms don't start to occur for about 7 to 15 days after infection, you would typically start to see pustules of black teleospores beginning to appear in the infected grass species. Favorable conditions for stem rust of wheat to spread are wet conditions and temperatures around 15 to 30 degrees Celsius. Rust spores can be blown around in light wind from plant to plant, though gusts of wind is how stem rust of wheat can spread over large areas in a short time. Intermittent gusts are the primary factor that transports the spores. Puccinia graminis is a heteroecious which requires two unrelated plant nodes to complete their life cycle and survive such hard conditions.
Management and control. Genetic resistance is known to be the most effective and common way in the prevention of the stem rust disease, as it is a major success in North America. At least 50 distinct genes for the vertical resistance to stem rust has been found in wheat or transferred to wheat. Many of these resistant genes are not equally useful, resulting in a lot of them to be discarded from the wheat breeding programs. Although many of the genes appeared to be non-useful, there were others that worked effectively in wide ranges. The most successful resistant gene is known as SR31, which occurs on a part of the chromosome of rye that was then transferred into wheat by the process of interspecific hybridization. With the addition of SR31, there are other genes carried over that increase grain yield, which is a part of the reason SR31 became widely popular. By the mid-1990s, the stem rust of wheat declined to insignificant levels due to the effectiveness of SR31. In recent years, the resistance of SR31 was finally overcome as there was a new race of stem rust of wheat fungus found in Uganda in 1999 that spread to Kenya and Ethiopia, causing large epidemics as stated earlier. The term used to define this gene is referred to as UG99. The development of the new stem rust of wheat fungus has expanded into areas like Kenya and others due to the mutations that overcome the resistant genes that wheat breeders used in North America and some other parts of the world. Some resistant genes are used in the recent areas with epidemics to decrease the amount of stem rust disease in their wheat, but it will eventually be necessary to find another resistant gene in order to ensure the absence of this disease. Chemical control is also used but is not as effective as genetic resistance. It is used in some areas where disease pressure is high as the fungicides put on a control on the rust diseases. In the United States, fungicides are generally prohibited for routine in most of the wheat growing areas. Also, the barberry eradication program was a 1918 federal and state campaign with the help from the United States Department of Agriculture and the 13 U.S. states in hopes to eradicate the common barberry bush from major wheat producing areas in the nation. Many people had problems with this campaign because the bush is very popular due to its many benefits. The barberry bush is home to many households, parks, and cemeteries. Also, the barberry bush was used to make wines and jellies from its berries, yellow dye from its bark, and potentially rake handles from its tough canes. As years went on, the program developed and learned that these bushes are not just around home sites and farms, but also deep in the woods and along fence rows. This challenged the program officials tremendously, leaving them with the only option of having to educate the public, which was practiced by having segments of identifying the bush in almost all media outlets. Finally, as time went on further, school children were taught about plant pathology at an early age, while nowadays plant pathology isn't even taught until you're an undergrad.
To conclude, stem rust is an occasional but devastating disease of wheat that harms the crops of farmers in both America and the world every year. Though with education and technological advancements, we can all help to prevent the disease. This is Josh Peterson, Matt Wright, and Max Fagan, and we're signing off.